Okay, continuing on now with my audio series, reading out some of my articles and observing reports and chase reports. This one is from an image report. It brings back a lot of fond memories from me in a brilliant storm chase day called Stunning Dungiven Thunderstorm and Funnel Clouds from May 26th, 2014. Make yourself comfortable, relax, and let me take you through this chase. Let's start. I had a really good feeling about this day. The latest model runs were showing potential for good thunderstorms across Northern Ireland on Bank Holiday Monday, so there was no question in my mind that Rashid and I would be chasing this day. With Cape values in the 900 range and a lifted index of -3, it looked extremely promising, with a trigger from solar heating in conjunction with a north-moving trough, which would significantly aid with the formation of storms, all taking place in a weakly capped environment. The only negative aspect with the synoptics was that speed shear was rather weak. By this I mean that the wind speed did not increase with height, which is a good indication of unorganised storms of the pulse type variety. However, this did not concern me in the slightest, for this negative was counterbalanced by the presence of a well-defined large-scale convergence zone. Convergence takes place when surface winds from different directions meet or converge. This is also known as surface convergence, and the area where this happens is called the Convergence Zone, or CZ for short, or CZ. A convergence zone is also a forcing mechanism allowing surface winds to ascend and lifting air parcels with them in the process, which in turn reach their saturation level and hence form convective clouds, which in turn should evolve into storms. Local scale, rotation or turning is also a product of convergence, so if the atmosphere can produce towering cumulus within the environment, then the chances of getting funnel clouds and weak tornadoes increase dramatically. I can say with complete honesty that the majority of the most exciting and dramatic storms and funnels I have ever witnessed have took place within a convergence zone, so needless to say I was very excited about this potential. I made sure to take a mental step back, slow down and think carefully about where my target area was going to be. I was up at 07:30 that morning, and the reason was that I was too excited to sleep, so in situations like this I like to get up and study every piece of information available, which can help me in making that correct decision on the hours ahead. I was happy to see that the overnight cold front had cleared through quickly and sooner than I had anticipated, which was great news because solar heating could commence and get to work on those early morning convective clouds below the border. What I loved about this setup was that for the first time this year, I would not have to undertake a long road trip to the border areas or even into the Republic itself, because all the models were silently screaming that the north was the best place to be today. I was overjoyed by this because it meant chasing in my own home territory, which was as much relief as it was exciting because I know the roads well and have my own favourite locations from which to view storms, so I already had an advantage over the other days. This was also a southerly flow. I honestly felt like celebrating when I saw this. Every other inland chase this season since April had taken place with a northerly or northwesterly or northeasterly flows, which are bad to chase if you are in the north because you're forced to head further south in order to get into the areas of good cape, and a location where convection will have time to drift and travel, so you need to be there ahead of time to have a chance at all, and more often than not storms fired way too far south beyond my mileage range, which was heartbreaking when you put in so much effort. During this period I had spent a lot of time and money chasing these weird setups, using up a lot of fuel and spending countless hours driving and coming home more or less empty-handed. I did get to witness beautiful sunsets and sun pillars, and later some dramatic pulse-type storm clouds. However, I never got that feeling of satisfaction from seeing something truly impressive. In my mind I have a selection of mental images of what I would like to catch on camera, and if I don't get any of these, then I get a very relentless and unsettled and even quite moody. I quite honestly can't relax or focus on anything else until I achieve my goals, so my way of dealing with this is to keep chasing every setup possible and never ever give up until I capture something which I am very happy with. Part of any success comes down to the decisions I make. However, a large part of it comes from nature herself. So in truth, I was really waiting for her to show the way. I finally felt that the tables were turning. On May 13th, a surprise funnel cloud was rotating almost over my house, which I honestly took as a sign that nature was finally noticing me, and that this little treat was an indication of better things to come. So I patiently waited for the next decent day, and that was May 26th. I reviewed the charts that morning on my laptop and noted the large Convergence Zone located over the Midlands and west parts of Northern Ireland. So there was no question that we were going to be in that box by the afternoon. And furthermore, this was a wonderful, joyful, delightfully slow, southerly flow. So it felt like everything was falling into place perfectly. And at this point, I felt like I honestly couldn't feel. I spent hours glued to the laptop. Then by noon, I took a break and lay down for 30 minutes just to centre myself. When I once again checked the radar at 12:30, I was shocked to see that storms had exploded all over the west side of the country over Donegal, and they were moving north. It was shocking how quickly these had developed. We wouldn't be chasing these as they were too distant. However, it was a very good sign that things were happening and that that weak cap had been broken, with Convergence already working its magic. There was nothing forming over inland Northern Ireland at all. In fact, it was very quiet. However, I sensed things could change very quickly, and we needed to be on the road with eyes on the sky. I am a big believer in watching convection, even if there are no storms in the area, because new updrafts can produce funnel clouds with little or even in the complete absence of precip or precipitation. So getting out and keeping a visual and building clouds is essential. Roisin and I hit the road and we were in top form.
Storms way out there.
We were not in a rush, so we were moving at a focused yet relaxed and controlled pace. We needed food and energy for the hours ahead, so we got a nice chicken curry with rice meal made up for us in Macara, then parked at a country location not far from the main Glenshane road. It was nice standing outside under the warm sun, eating and watching white convection slowly grow against a blue sky while the birds sang around us. The day was getting warmer and warmer as the afternoon approached, and I could sense that things were going to happen soon. We then relocated to Oakley Film Station on Glenshane Pass, which became our base camp. It was very warm at this stage, and I could sense that things were going to happen soon. We then relocated to Oakley Film Station on Glenshane Pass, which became our base camp. It was very warm at this stage, with strong heating, and the station was busy with people coming and going on this nice bank holiday day. I'm pretty sure Roisin and I were the only people there watching the sky, hoping for storms. There were small black bases forming over the hills, and I said to Roisin, "There are going to be funnels today." I was certain of it. Sometimes you can just tell by looking at the clouds and the feeling in the air. The slack flow was perfect for spin-ups, and with a convergence zone in the area, the atmosphere was prime for funnel formation, so we watched every cloud base just in case. We got Wi-Fi, so I got online to check the latest, and by now it seemed everyone was on board with the forecast. The Met Office had issued a yellow warning for heavy, slow-moving showers and thunderstorms with risk of local flooding, and their warning area matched the Cape charts. Radar showed not even a drop of precip over Northern Ireland yet. However, things have changed below the border, with a large cluster of showers which had formed just below the border to the south of Fermanagh, Lakelands, which were in the process of moving north over Lough Erne, then eventually making a beeline for the West Midlands. My plan was to wait and let the cluster of showers move north. Then in theory, once they entered the Convergence Zone, they should turn on into storms or at least produce a funnel. We changed our location again to the top of Glenshane Pass and parked under small dark bases while a heavy shower suddenly dumped on us. Patience was the name of the game. We simply had to wait, then once those showers moved into the Midlands, we could shoot west and intercept them. This would be our main play of the day. We waited some more, and realised we had a lot of time to kill. So Roisin suggested we move somewhere so we can go for a walk while we waited on things to happen. At first I was hesitant, as I didn't want to move too far, However, I realised it was a good idea to get us out of the car for a while and get some much needed fresh air and exercise. The latter would be good for dealing with the background adrenaline build-up. I liked it, however I said to Roisin it had to be somewhere with no tall trees so we could watch the sky at the same time. She thought for a minute and then said, Benbrata? That was a good idea, because Benbrata would be further west within our target area, and the mountain would offer us a tremendous view of the sky, so I could watch for funnels while we walked. It wasn't long before we were on the road once again. We drove through Dungiven, then went west through the narrow country roads towards Benbrata Mountain along the Sperrins and parked halfway up. I opened the door to get outside, and as I did so, I casually looked west and saw a CG lightning bolt strike down. Talk about lucky to have been looking at the right place at the right time. The bolt was many miles away from most distant storms out west, so it was quite amazing to see a bolt that clearly from this range in daylight. Here's an annotated image showing the scene. You can see the wind farm to the left where that bolt hit in the distance, and in the foreground is new convection or cells forming, while behind Lowes is the top of the storm to the southwest of Derry/Londonderry, all moving left to right in the image. I took that bolt as a lucky omen and set up my video camera with mini tripod on the car roof and filmed in that direction in case there were more. You can see this at a time lapse in the video. The view from the mountain was utter perfection. This was our vantage point facing south, which provided us with an unobstructed view across the country, a direction facing the southerly flow. So in theory, we should see low showers and radar visually moving in that area for miles in advance, so I knew we couldn't have picked a better location. Nice one, Roisin. We walked up the steep mountain, which was hard work. If you know the area, then you know what I'm talking about. The climb is even hard in a car. We reached the top and began our trek back down the incline when we suddenly heard a distant rumble of thunder. We both looked at each other with a smile. However, just in case it was a high altitude plane, we stopped and listened carefully. Another rumble, which, despite its distance, sounded angry. It was happening. We got back in the car, then I set up the video camera once again on the car roof facing south and began rolling in the area where a formation of clouds had formed to the south, with light shower curtains gently sweeping across the landscape. These were that shower complex we had spotted on radar earlier, which had now moved north into our target area. And although it looked unexceptional at this point, there were forces at work which in time would turn this into a beast of a storm. The rear or southwest end of that base was rain-free, and I noticed a thick, long lowering of scud suddenly trailing from the back edge. It didn't look like normal scud, and just then a familiar red alert went off my brain. I watched carefully, and soon that scud began to tighten up and rotate into a brief funnel cloud. I had just enough time to get a few still images with the 18 to 55mm kit lens before it dissipated. This was the view at 55mm. Cropped in closer, the funnel was rotating over the open countryside to the south of Dungiven, which is out of frame to the right. I couldn't believe it. We just bagged another funnel cloud within half an hour of arriving here. The time was 13:52 UT. The vortex lasted approximately 1 minute and was at its most photogenic stage for perhaps 30 to 40 seconds. Unfortunately, I was shooting at that crucial stage. It then vanished rather quickly, so although the sighting was brief, it was no less exciting for it. And as far as I am concerned, this day was already a success, so anything else which happened would be considered a bonus. This is a wide-angle view of the cloud base with funnel moments before it vanished. After it did so, the base above it was still rotating for some time afterwards, which was interesting to watch because it teased us with the suggestion that more funnels could be in store. As you can see from this image, there was mid-level cloud blocking the upper regions of this cell, so I had no visual clue that something significant was brewing until the base intensified with time. This was really us watching the birth of an impressive thunderstorm. I had now switched to my 10 to 22mm f3.5 ultra-wide angle lens for the rest of these images. This is the same scene looking in that same direction 20 minutes later, and it was now clear a storm was forming. We could hear periodic rumbles of thunder from this direction, but couldn't see any lightning, so we kept watching and listening. Roisin did a couple more walks up the mountain by herself. However, after several closer rumbles, she decided to stay close to the car and watch the clouds develop with me. It was clearly evident from casual observation that this was a line of young cells growing in an area of significant surface convergence, because I could actually see this process at work in real time, which was amazing to watch. This developing storm was incredibly slow. However, with time I could see that it was moving south to north, or left to right on the images, and ever so slightly towards us. However, behind me I could see large clumps of cloud moving in, north to south over my head and merging into the forming storm. I mean, you could actually see the atmosphere organising and blending together like a perfect machine as the environment built a big thunderstorm piece by piece with clouds from the surrounding area. We were placed right in the middle of a convergence zone, and this process was utterly amazing to watch, and I knew from this moment on that we were in business and that we were staying here for the duration of the storm. This is the same image with annotations to visually show what I was explaining. Ever since I have been interested in storms, there may only have been a small number of occasions when I had the luxury of watching a big storm grow in front of me in the same area without much movement, while having the great fortune of not even feeling a drop of rain on my skin, so that I could watch the process in complete comfort. It was like being in the best seat in the cinema all by yourself, for free. The only thing missing was the popcorn, and this was playing right now. This is what the storm looked like 34 minutes later. Roisin and I watched as the invisible hands of nature created this brutal looking storm. The light was absolutely magic, with the mountain all lit by hazy warm sunshine, while on the landscape below a black monster was lurking with angry rumbles and flashes of lightning. What was astonishing was the fact that this storm didn't seem to be going anywhere. It just looked like it was hovering over the countryside while building higher and higher by the minute. The base was huge with absolutely solid clouds, and brief glimpses through the cloud above I could see the white tops of several solid updrafts leaning forward, and as I watched the sunny clear sector to the east of the storm, I could see new towers exploding up and feeding into the back of the storm as the line grew in strength. We were filming with 2 cameras, which was a really good setup. I was using the HD video function on my Canon 600D with the 10mm lens attached, which allowed me to film ultra wide angle structure, while Roisin filmed handheld with the Samsung HD video camera, while occasionally taking stills and video with her own smartphone. However, before that, the Samsung was still filming from the car roof. If you look carefully in this image, you can see it. I got a phone call from my dad at this time. He was on a fishing holiday in County Fermanagh. However, on this day he was near Mullaghmore on the west coast and was informing me of storm clouds building in the area, and was wondering if Roisin and I were in the area. I said we were watching a brilliant thunderstorm right now from Bambrata, had just seen a funnel cloud. Then he heard a loud rumble of thunder across the line from our storm and said he would let me get on with it. The last thing I said was to keep his camera handy, as there could be more funnels today. This was the full-blown thunderstorm in progress. Yet, amazingly, it was still growing stronger and moving at a snail's pace over the lush fields below. It was pure black with thunder and random CGs hitting, which were now getting closer. I loved the fact that this beast was just hanging around this same area for such a long time, and although it was slowly inching its way towards us, it was doing so at such a slow pace that we could sit still and just watch and shoot at our leisure while enjoying the warm, humid afternoon, with episodes of delightful sunshine. So we had a storm while catching rays at the same time. It's not often you get to experience that in this country. It really did feel like this was nature's reward after all the recent long-distance storm chases this season, and I was savouring every second of it. Of interest, check out that cluster of buildings in the distance. That's the town of Dungiven, and just look at the size of the storm above it. Angry teeth had formed on the south side of the line, and it was obvious that a shelf cloud was forming with cool downdrafts of air, known as a gust front, from the storm, scooping warm moist air up ahead of it, forming a shelf indicating that the storm would soon be reaching maturity and would soon also become outflow dominant. I climbed over the gate and got into this field to get clear of the wire, so I wanted an unobstructed foreground for my images. The pace had suddenly picked up, with very dense curtains of rain and hail dropping for miles across the countryside in great sheets as the storm formed a shelf cloud at an astonishing pace. The motions going on along the leading edge were impressive, with concentrated areas of rotation which looked like brief spin-ups forming within the teeth. This was one of the cloud-to-ground CG bolts captured by the Samsung from the car roof. The storm was pretty close and the thunder much louder, and as the storm intensified, so did our adrenaline. We were truly in the zone here and loving every second of it, and there was a great sense of rush as we knew that time was running out as the storm was gaining ground on us, so we needed to get as many images and video footage as possible before the precip hit us. The storm now looked like something from the Great Plains of the USA, with solid mean structure throwing out CGs and rumbling away. Roisin loved the sound of the thunder over the open countryside. I was telling her earlier about how different thunder sounds out in the open in the hills, and now she understood what I meant. There really is something special about a storm in the wide open countryside. On this mountain it was completely quiet, with only the birds and sheep making very perceptible sound, so you can imagine how the acoustics of a storm would feel in this environment. Thunder seemed to roll and echo across the mountain and valleys and took on a persona all of its own. I can tell you there is no better experience than coming face to face with an approaching storm out in the open, away from everyday noise, buildings and busy roads. We perceived it as a personal experience, as if we were having a communion with the storm. I asked Roisin to take the Samsung video camera and film the storm handheld for a more point of view style of shooting, and I liked the fact that she got me included in the frame for a sense of scale and for that added human dimension. She did me proud and got 2 wonderful close range CGs. This was the first which hit the ground just as I was pointing out the aspects of the storm to Roisin. Notice the second order branching on the bolt. There was no question the storm was making a beeline for us and the thunder was getting louder, while a feeling of danger became notable, as it just dawned on me that we were entirely exposed out in the open on a mountain with lightning. However, the car was only 10 feet away from us, and that was the safest place we could be. I knew from observation that all the lightning I saw was taking place within the precipitation area, so in theory we would be fine until that precip hit us. I wasn't going to stay out until that happened, however. I wanted to wait a little while longer so that I could get personal with the storm, and it's often during these close range encounters when the best structure images with a wide angle lens can be obtained, and that's what I was after. Structure shot of the year for me. In fact, this was the best daylight storm structure I have seen since 2009, and yet again it looked like something from the US. This was 10mm extreme wide angle, which is an absolutely huge field of view, and yet the storm cannot even fit within the frame, with a large portion of it extending far out to the left while moving left to right and towards us at the same time. The low level and mid level structure was amazing, as this beast seemed to hover menacingly over the countryside, with solid shelf cloud along the leading edge and silvery hail curtains falling behind. Note the size of the houses and barns compared to the storm for a sense of scale. Periodic flashes would appear from within the precip, accompanied by CG bolts along the front of the curtains at very close range. You have to appreciate that this storm and its lightning was considerably closer to us than this image shows, because ultra-wide angle lenses tend to push subjects further away. However, in reality, the nasty scud sections on the shelf were almost above our heads at this point. Despite being a linear storm, I noticed well-defined rounded elements within the shelf which spawned fantastic areas of rotation. In fact, when this image and the others below were taken, we could see 3 impressive areas of rotation located within the dark underside of the shelf, and for a while I thought a tornado was possible. Funnels and tornadoes mostly form at the back of a storm, or at least under an updraft, However, it is common to get brief spin-ups and shelf clouds too, in the form of funnels and weak tornadoes, due to the kind of dynamic mixing and forcing which takes place associated with the gust front. These features are more common with squall lines. However, they were rotating like mad right before our eyes within the storm. Note that dark inverted cone-shaped lowering to the far right. Considering the rotation we were observing on our side of the storm, I would suspect that lowering was doing the same. Roisin's second CG catch of the day, and this one was rather humorous because I looked like I conjured up this bolt using my arms. Check it out on my video footage. By the way, those dark clouds were rotating too when the bolt struck. Roisin observed that the sheep sounded scared with the loud thunder. However, I think she may have been speaking about herself. Roisin kept asking if we were safe, and I didn't blame her. We would be taking shelter any minute, but first more structure shots were needed. 22mm of the north end of the storm, showing that inverted cone lowering. I guess we may have been close to getting another funnel or even tornado here. However, we would have needed to have been closer to tell for certain, and our observation of it was brief, as we were getting distracted by the lightning and concerns about our safety. This is a deep crop from the above image. I was so proud of Roisin because despite all the close range lightning and the element of danger, she never stopped filming and continued to document the structure while combating that growing anxiety from the unnerving questions about where the next bolt was going to strike. Another full 10mm structure shot, this time with Bimbrata Mountain itself in the frame. Not long after this image was taken, the suspicious lowering became more loose and blocky as cold air from the precip undercut any moist air it was feeding on. Big shelf cloud with vivid rotating elements and dramatic lifting along the lip, now almost overhead. This was definitely the best shelf I have captured since the stunner over Ballyronan back in June 2009. I suddenly felt a strange sensation above my head as if the atmosphere was highly charged, and I immediately sensed danger and that a bolt in our area was due at any moment, so I ran back, climbed over the gate and got back in the car. Roisin was already waiting inside. I turned the car around to face east, then we watched the storm pass over us with majestic curtains of hail from the black clouds aloft. We filmed through the front windscreen together for close range bolts. However, they seemed to be embedded within the precip, so we kept shooting and taking stills anyway, as the clouds were truly amazing. We could almost feel the clouds, if you know what I mean. To get even more personal, we drove to the very top of Bimbrata, in an area completely exposed to the elements. We were the highest object on the mountain, and the sense of vulnerability was more tangible. We watched lightning and heard thunder. Some of the latter sent slight vibrations through the car. This mountaintop lightning encounter reminded me of my very first official storm chase back on July 16th, 2007, when Conor MacDonald and his girlfriend and I experienced fierce lightning activity from the top of Slieve Gallion, and reflecting back on those memories made me smile. I love this stuff, and I am truly happy to be doing this kind of photography. I feel it is in my blood. A new core erupted to life on the west side of the storm and passed right over us, producing nasty hail. The hailstones were only pea-sized, but they were numerous and hard, which made a nice din on the car roof. I had the window down, and hailstones were falling in and bouncing on the dash and steering wheel, which was cool. The storm kept reducing as it moved north, then weakened, so we turned around and headed back down the mountain again to be greeted by torrents of rainwater running down the mountain road. Once on ground level, we were shocked by the amount of water on the roads. It was a good job there were no rivers nearby this town, or a serious flash flooding event was likely. Dungiven and the surrounding area experienced serious rainfall from the storm, and it was no surprise when you think that this storm had been practically hovering over the same area for several hours, dumping rain and hail the entire time. Once on Glenshane Pass, the weather changed from wet to dry, and it was clear that no storms had happened back home, and that we had experienced one of the main events of the day. I have to say, I was buzzing for a week after this chase, because it was utter perfection, which is rare to experience. And my own personal forecast and target area was perfect, and the storm itself was perfect. Not to mention the rarity of experiencing a stationary storm in Northern Ireland through its entire life cycle from birth to death for over 2 hours, which was a memory I will never forget. And to have Roisin with me when it happened. She has been through many bus chases with me this year, which made it even more special. So thank you, nature. When I got home, I learned that my dad had seen some action too, that very same evening. A few days later, I met up with my dad. Remember the conversation we had during that storm over the phone? And he had some news for me. Dad had captured a funnel cloud over Donegal Bay, which he documented on still images and video using his Canon 600D. And better yet, he did all this from a restaurant at Rusnowla. This is the wide-angle view looking north from this location. Close-up crop of the funnel, which was rotating from high base convection, which had no doubt been generated by sea breeze convergence. The funnel looked solid and very substantial. Dad even drew some attention because of what he was doing, and several people asked what he was photographing, so he used the opportunity to explain to a lady and her son all about funnel clouds, which I'm sure got them interested in the sky too. That makes 4 funnel clouds over the country on Bank Holiday Monday. This was also my dad's first ever funnel cloud catch, and I was well chuffed when I saw the images. Perhaps storm chasing is in our blood. Nice work, Dad.